Welcome to the Planetary Health Lab podcast, where science meets whole person healing. We interview top experts in integrative wellness to bring you vetted, evidence-based tools for mental and physical well-being. Because when we align human health with planetary health, we all thrive.
So you're a leadership expert. How can we all be better leaders?
I would say in terms of that, in order to be a better leader, you've got to do a lot of work on yourself in terms of understanding who you are and dealing with your stuff so that you don't project it onto your team. So I think that a self-aware leader is probably the best type of leader, and somebody that really understands that as a leader, your job is really to serve. Your job is there to be a support structure for your team, not necessarily be the one that is just like at the top, sort of calling the shots. Your job is to really get people to collaborate, get people to work in sync, and really ensure that there is synergy between the team. So yeah, just somebody that is really aware, able to pick up what it is that's going on around them, and just really be willing to allow people to come in and share and collaborate in a way that is really important for the entire team to get the whole company to work at a better level. That's what I would say with regards to that.
And it's interesting because no one teaches us leadership. So a lot of it is you learn from observation or going throughout your life. So what do you suggest for people looking to be, how can they practice being a better leader or incorporating or becoming more emotionally attuned and aware?
So look, the first thing I'd always say is exposing yourself to people who really seem to align to your values. There are so many incredible women out there that are leading just from a place of like absolute love and power. And just to open your circle in terms of it doesn't matter what industry you're in, even if it's a male-dominated industry, there are so many powerful women out there that are really leading from a place of absolute beauty. In terms of being more emotionally in tune, again, the biggest thing is for you to understand what is going on inside of you. And when you are aware like that, what will then happen is you are able to know what is happening inside of me and what is this really about? Because otherwise, if that does not happen, you might think that your team is really triggering you when actually there's something that has been hit inside of you that has got nothing to do with them. So I would just say that awareness, knowing what is going on inside of you all the time, is really the first place to absolutely start with regards to that.
Do you have an example of a use case of that, or maybe in your life or any just generic moment of that where maybe you're triggered or something common we probably see in the workplace these days?
Listen, it happens, even to me, it happens all the time, right? So you're sitting there, somebody says something to you, or you just generally feel like this overwhelming feeling of frustration, aggravation, irritation. So often what then happens is in that situation, if you're not aware, you may think that something might have just happened at the office, right? So you might think that it is your employee that is really causing that, but actually something happened. You saw an image or something like that triggered something inside of you from a past experience that is bringing up those emotions. And it's got nothing to do with the people around you. And it happens all the time. Generally, with regards to me, when that happens, because again, it's a natural thing to be triggered, always ask myself before I respond in that moment, what is this really about? I have this really beautiful process. If we have time today, I'd love to share it with you, where you're just like connecting with that and going, is it about what's happening now? Or is this just something within me that is coming from a past place that is just showing up now because something within me has recognized it as the same?
Yeah, the process. What do you mean? What's the process?
So we are, with regards to emotional triggers, taught that we should be repressing them. We are taught that we should be pushing them away, that we should just be positive, like actually to the degree of being toxic, right? So we are never shown what is the useful thing to do with that, which is to really acknowledge and face it. That is the only way that you can really deal with emotions that are coming up. The challenge that you have is, what you might not realize is, the minute you're trying to push an emotion away, the minute you're trying to will it to be gone, you're actually just making it stronger. So in order for you to allow yourself to really work with that in a way that is positive, the first step is always to meet it. So to notice it, to be like, and the one model that I've come up with is a beautiful little allow model. It's so useful. So the first step is just to acknowledge it. So admit that you have these feelings that are going on inside of you. Then let it be there without trying to fix it, change it, judge it, move it. Just again, meet it, letting it be in that space, giving it space to actually be there. And then to connect with and listen. So what are you saying to yourself in that moment? What is the narrative that your mind is piping up with around why it is that this feeling is there? Because there will always be a story. So the first thing that will happen is that the emotion will come. The second thing is that this narrative around why that is there will be there to justify the feeling that you have. Then it's really just to observe, where is this feeling in my body? How strong is that feeling? If I could give it a shape or a color, what shape or color would it be? Like allowing yourself to associate it with it in that way really allows you to work with it in a different kind of way of depth. And then to orient all of your energy into that space and just breathe into it. So it's allowing all of that energy into your body to go wherever it is, doesn't matter if it's your chest, your head, your belly. And then after that, while it is that you're sitting with that, really to ask yourself two questions, and that is, why is this showing up for me? And what is this really about? So you're going through this beautiful process of just allowing your emotions to speak, because really what's happening is in that moment, there is a part of you that is asking for acknowledgement. It's asking for recognition. And if you would just be willing to see that as a gift in terms of there is a wounded part of you that is showing up, asking for you to give it space, you would see that you could allow yourself to process that in a way that it would be useful to you. So it's really just to be with it and give it space to actually exist without trying to force it away, push it away, pretend it's not there, because none of those things really help you transmute that feeling that you have. It's actually just making it worse. It's 100% making it worse.
And then what's the following after that? So let's say you feel disrespected or something by something that happened at work, and you get triggered and you just say, I need to take a break, and you go and get in touch with your emotion, figure out what's going on. What's the follow-up to that? Is there a conversation with the person? What is the process?
So the first thing I would say is to understand which quality is showing up that you find so triggering in that moment. So for instance, I feel like that person disrespected me. Okay. So when you understand that is a trigger for you, and also then to just notice, like, how often in my life do I feel disrespected? Is there a pattern here that is showing up for me? So I'm not saying that you mustn't have the conversation, but just understand that the reason that you're being triggered in the first place is because there is a quality that you find so terrible that when it shows up in other people, that you get triggered in the exact same way. So what's really interesting is when I work with people with regards to their triggers, I will then ask them to describe themselves in terms of how it is that they want to show up or aspire to show up in the world. And they'll often, somebody that has been disrespected will be somebody that wants to be seen as very respectful. So they will get very triggered by somebody that is the opposite of that. So they don't want to be seen as somebody that is disrespectful. So when that quality comes up, it is incredibly emotionally charged for them. Of course, there is always a time and place to be having those conversations with people. But the first thing is just to understand this is something that triggers me, and where my trigger is, that is where my work is. And then the thing is to understand, like, are you then showing up in a way that you feel that you have to be respectful all the time in a way that actually limits you? You may find then that you overcompensate in that region not to be seen as somebody that is disrespectful to other people. And then if you had to go down that line, you may find, okay, so this is a little bit of out of balance. So the key thing here is to understand that there are these lines. So if I've got like very respectful here and absolutely disrespectful here, we feel like we have to live on either end. But the point is, like, when you are working with someone like me, to understand that you can move along that line and that you don't have to live in any of those spaces, and you can discern what is right for you, if you know what I'm saying. So the first thing I would say with regards to that kind of thing is just what is going on inside of me that I'm being triggered about? Why is this trigger showing up for me? Am I actually overcompensating to the opposite of that, so that you can understand what is going on within you? And obviously working with a coach is really helpful to do that. I would say if you are courageous enough to have the conversation, which is always the best thing if you are doing it in a way that you are wanting resolution, is to be willing to openly communicate and express, listen, I felt like you disrespected me, and being willing to share that instead of internalizing it, if you know what I'm saying. So it is obviously very dependent on the circumstances. So if I was working with a client, I would really want to know exactly what went down. Is there a pattern? Who is the person? What is the context of this person? That would be really important information. I don't know if that answered your questions, where I feel like I went down a whole rabbit hole there.
No, I love that. Yeah, that's perfect. No, I'm curious now about your journey through leadership and how you've grown as a leader throughout the years and your training, and if there's any pivotal moments for you in your career?
So my journey into leadership started quite young. Like even when I was at school, a very high achiever. I'm actually the youngest of 7 children in a blended family. So I really felt like I had to be noticed in this really large blended family. Going into my working life, I got promoted really young. I was a very high achiever. And I think the biggest highlight in my journey in terms of going into sort of the coaching aspect of my life and understanding the kind of leader that I wanted to be came from this 360 analysis survey that we had to do as part of a management development course. And I'm sure many people watching this would have gone through it. You get reviewed by people that report to you, people that work with you, and people that you report to. And I was graded by 2 of my peers, 2 of my male counterparts, as being very overly ambitious and willing to step on people. And that was really jarring for me. It actually shook me to my core because I am not that. Like I've always been about growth, really just helping people succeed and wanting to help them do that. At the time, I really thought that I was coming across in the wrong way. So I didn't understand that was being projected at the time. What was so important and such a gift for me was because then I really started to look at how am I being seen, but then also who am I trying to emulate? What kind of leader do I really want to be? So I couldn't afford to go and study when I left school. So I went straight into the workforce. And that was always a thing for me in terms of feeling like I was never educated enough to be in this kind of leadership position. So I carried quite a lot of imposter syndrome within me. I came to a level where I was like, listen, I wanted to study further. And somebody said to me a 5-year MBA. And I was like, I don't think I'll be accepted. And then I was. And I spent 3 years in that course being so afraid to even speak up because I felt like I had absolutely no value to offer. So I thought, okay, so when I graduate, I'm going to feel like I'm enough and that I'm able to have my say and add value. And then I graduated and it did not come. And then I was like, okay, fine. When I have my business, that'll be it. And it just did not come. And I then signed up for the coaching that I do, the Jungian coaching course. And I just found myself so frustrated again because I was in this really expensive course and I couldn't get myself to speak because I was so afraid that I was not meant to be there. And my coach said something really important to me. I was sitting with her and she just said to me, tell me how your mother would show up in these situations. And then realized that I had taken an inherited pattern from my mom and I was carrying it and I had not chosen it. And that was really incredible for me. And in that instant, the minute I realized I could put it down, I did. So those were like really important for me. And since then, imposter syndrome is not really something that has ever sat with me again because I realized my absolute value from like that moment, realizing that it wasn't mine to carry. That has been my leadership journey. I then moved into my own business. I have my coaching practice and I have a spare shop in a male-dominated industry here in SA. And it's just so beautiful to be able to lead in this environment in a way that is absolutely who I am, which is leading from a place of absolute like feminine love. And it's not about rejecting the masculine. It's actually about being in balance with that. And just being okay with, I don't have to come across as aggressive, right? I can be really loving and show up 100% in my feminine self and be consistent and caring and all of the things that a good leader is without needing to feel like I am with like I have to be someone else, which is a really beautiful place to be. So that's where the coaching side, like I just want to help women, feel like they can do the same thing. You can be exactly who you are. You don't have to change any bit about yourself. It's actually about reconnecting to self. And yeah, in terms of being a manager, I just feel like it's such an important role to have. Because you really have the ability, like I've had such great leaders in my life, you really have the ability to impact people's lives and the trajectories of their lives in such an important way. So to me, it's such an important part of people's day. So what do we do with that time? Like how are we holding that as sacred? I think that's really important.
Speaking to being a woman leader in a male-dominated industry, do you think men should stay in their masculine as leaders, or do you think they could take some note as integrating maybe more feminine leadership qualities?
I think that men could definitely take a page out of our playbook, but not in the sense of changing who they are, even just understanding that there is nothing wrong with the feminine because the feminine is so strong. You know what I'm saying? To be nurturing is to be feminine. I think we have a lot more men now that are more in touch with that sort of feminine aspect of leadership. The whole thing is, I think, to bring both of those into balance as a man and as a woman. You know what I'm saying? And the whole thing is in terms of like our lives, we're essentially in terms of doing our work, really trying to find balance with regards to that, if you know what I'm saying, or seeking balance with regards to that. And also it's about understanding that It doesn't really matter where you are on the scale. The thing is, like for me, also with regards to these qualities, like if I need to go into a meeting and I have to show up as like really like strong, I can borrow like in a way that is like more masculine. I can borrow those qualities and I can use them in that moment, but I don't have to stay there. So it's like you can really choose which qualities to use at the best time in a way that is best for the business, for the team, and for yourself. So for certain, I think that's, men could definitely see themselves being better leaders if they would embrace a little bit more of the feminine, for sure.
Any particular qualities of the feminine?
I would say, I think nurturing to me is probably one of the most important qualities. Also, I don't know, could active listening really be seen as a feminine quality? I don't know, but just that being willing to just be with somebody and hear what they have to say, and just being willing to embrace that moment from a place of compassion, kindness, love. You know what I'm saying, though? That is, but I guess to me that is nurturing. So and also being willing to nurture them in their roles, nurture them in understanding that making mistakes is okay, but there are consequences. So I do think nurturing for me is probably one of the most important aspects that I think would be useful to them. Yeah.
And then what is a trait you would consider more masculine that you utilize occasionally or more often than not?
Let me see, a masculine trait that I utilize. I have in some coaching sessions and even in sessions with some of my employees at times had to come across as quite like very stark and direct to create a break state, because that is not my natural state of being. So if I show up and I'm like really direct and coming across as quite like stern, like in that moment, that would then create, it shifts the energy in a way that they realize, okay, she's not normally like this. I need to be paying attention. So to create a break state 100%, that has probably been the most useful for me. When I'm in meetings and those kinds of things, I must admit that it hasn't really come across that I was specifically needed to use something. But I would say when I'm working with individuals in my team where something is needed, I, for instance, could go and borrow that quality for sure. And it does work. Certainly, there are other masculine qualities that are also really useful. If you're going into negotiations, of course, that is probably also really useful as well. Yeah, it's just very much dependent on the context. So
one last question before we have to get going. If going back to the imposter syndrome, I think this is such a common struggle for people, especially for women entering professional
100%.
arena. What are some tips or any sort of advice you would give to someone struggling with imposter syndrome?
So the very first thing I would say is acknowledge that you have it, first and foremost, because it's really difficult even for me to admit at the time that I was feeling that way. So the number one thing is just to acknowledge that you have it. And then I would say the next thing is, if you are feeling, because often what happens with imposter syndrome, there is all this evidence that you are successful, yet you will constantly explain it away. Oh, that only happened because of this and because of that, and not actually seeing that you are the one that is bringing that to the table. So I would say, when you feel you are not inherently worthy in that sense, where is the actual evidence? Go and find it. So you say that I don't add value. Okay, prove it. So you are saying that I don't have the skill set. Really? Don't you? Have you done it before? Prove it. So go and have a look at the actual evidence with regards to that being there or not being there, outside of the narrative that your mind is telling you. And then the next thing that I would say just with regard to that is being willing to really be brave enough to move. Why do I feel this way? What is it within me that feels that it is less than or not enough? And how has this shown up in other areas of my life? Because I can guarantee you it is not isolated to work. You will notice that it will have followed you throughout your life. In my case, it followed me from a very early age. And, when it is that you are feeling like that imposter, you are showing up in particular ways in order to be seen as somebody that is of value. So that would have carried through from childhood. And when you allow yourself to pay attention, you'll actually start to see that. And I'll just say, it's just so useful to work with somebody that can help you navigate around that, because the mind is very tricky. So it can sometimes lead you down a path that you're not able to see things for yourself because you get wrapped up in all the wrong things.
Yeah, our mind does play tricks on us. Thank you, Chantelle. And it was so wonderful speaking to you. Where can people find you? They're ready to get a hold of you, want to reach out and learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, so thank you so much for having me. People can pop into my website. So it's www.thefemininelead.com. I'm also on Instagram, and I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook. My handle is @thefemininelead. So if anybody would like to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to do that.
Thanks for listening to the Planetary Health Lab podcast. If you're interested in being a guest or want to nominate someone doing impactful work in integrative wellness, we'd love to hear from you. reach out by email at info@teenyhabitat.com. That's info@tinihabitat.com. Better health starts with better information. Keep learning with us on Instagram, Spotify, and X.